Or now with the third part. It would appear that propaganda for peace can bear fruit only when there is a fear for war. So we can't talk about peace from civilization and the continuous downward spiral for humanity that's going on, because there's no fear of that war. You have to talk about North Korea or China or maybe global warming if you're talking to the right audience, or the pandemic, or aliens maybe. The particular skill of communist propaganda in this area is that it creates a threat of war while conducting peace propaganda. So the actual threats in society come through the peace propaganda, as we saw during 9/11 and the Orwellian society that came in with technology, like he says in this book. The constant threat of war arising from Stalin's posture made the propaganda of the partisans for peace effective and led non-communists to attach themselves to the fringe of the party via that propaganda. But in 1957, when the threat of war seemed much less real, because Khrushchev had succeeded Stalin, such propaganda had no hold at all on the public. So a lot of people who decried the injustices of communism were forgotten as soon as the president changed. Isn't that amazing? Obama made everybody forget about Bush, that's for sure. Conservatives and Democrats. Because when Trump was in power, we never heard the comparisons with Bush that much. That's because he was the opposite of Bush. He was more pro-America, pro-Constitution, pro-militia, whereas Bush was strongly against these. We must not tolerate these conspiracy theorists, he said. So anyway, it would have been a good thing to hear the comparisons for me, because I came in America in Clinton, but I wasn't paying attention until 9/11 happened, I guess. Started paying more attention to American news. Before that, all I knew about these things were Fox News once in a while, which was totally local stuff. It wasn't about big political events. And then I used to watch X-Files. That was more about like spiritual, metaphysical stuff. So nothing really about the real issues that I learned as a kid watching TV, other than from school and all the political correct indoctrination that I learned there, which prevented me from discussing these important topics with my peers while I could have, unfortunately. It did put a stall in that. But anyway, so the news about Hungary seemed far more important to the Western world than the general problem of world peace through communistic Khrushchev. These various elements explain why the well-written text on the problem of peace fell flat. So in the previous video I was talking about that text, which was ignored at that conference, even though it was very well written with solutions and the problems of peace, regarding the problems of peace. But at that time it fell flat, although it would have aroused considerable attention at some other time. It's kind of similar. Anyway, not really. Once again, we note that propaganda should be continuous, should never relax, and must vary its themes with the tide of events. Yeah, so that's like what the bitches say about the nice guys, you know? They say, oh, one day you'll get somebody. It's like they're saying that, well, I'm interested in you, but not now. It's like, I'm too young and having fun now. I don't want that boring lifestyle that you offer. But one day I'll want that peace and security, they think. So that's what they say, right? That's what they tell the nice guy. That's what I read in the comments. And it sounds true. And then we know that propaganda, well, anyway. So yeah, they don't stop for the nice guy because they gotta perfect their propaganda continuously, can't relax, and has to vary their themes with the tide of events because the matriarchy controls their mind too. The popular beliefs of the females, which is engineered through media, is also the tide of events what they're talking about. So hence we have the CC, the cock carousel, in full motherfucking effect. The terms, the words, the subjects that propaganda utilizes must have in themselves the power to break the barrier of the individual's indifference. Here's the buzzwords I was talking about, the code words, some say. Or maybe not, but just the buzzwords, the trendy topics. So they must penetrate like bullets, these subjects. So the themes, the terms, the words, and the subjects. So the words and the subjects must have themselves the power to break the barrier of the individual's indifference. They must penetrate like bullets. They must spontaneously evoke a set of images and have a certain grandeur of their own. To circulate outdated words. Hence we have all the... I mean, it started when people started saying you shouldn't say, can you do this for me? You should say, will you do this for me? And that's where I started hearing these outdated words and so forth. The thought policing of speech done by the Ministry of Truth. To circulate outdated words or pick new one that can penetrate only by force is unavailing. For timeliness furnishes the operational words with their explosive and effective power. The operational words with their explosive and effective power. So I remember when I was reading Jacques Italy, and I was talking about the nomadic society. That was the 4th chapter, and then soon after I put a lot of energy into that chapter actually, because I was rapping into it too, and at this point I was better at my book reading with experience, I think. Nobody really told me that, but just my own judgment. But I thought I was doing good. I was getting a lot of views too. So around that same time, in a week or maybe a couple weeks, I don't know, but I noticed soon after that in other channels that I was watching, I was hearing those same operational words that I had introduced, I guess, or reintroduced, perhaps. But yeah, it's true. It's like some words get outdated, and some have, even words have their own, power and the power to break the barrier of the indifference. Their buzz factor, I guess. So they have explosive and effective power. Effective means has an effect on the emotions, and explosive means it's attention getting, I guess. Part of the power of propaganda is due to its use of the mass media, but this power will be dissipated if propaganda relies on operation words that have lost their force. Hence, I guess the best propagandists check Google for the most popular words. I guess that's something people probably do every day if they're really involved in their channel and making a dramatic impact in the world at the same time. So in Western Europe, and if they have an audience especially, you can notice that. In Western Europe, the word Bolshevik in 1925, so in Western Europe, the word Bolshevik in 1925, so Bolshevik in 1925, fascist in 1936, and collaborator in 19. Oh yeah, because right now we're living in like the 1930s society. In Europe, it was all beat up by war. The economy had collapsed. Sex, drugs were rampant, and there was a documentary called "The Sin Cities," and it was talking about Paris, Berlin, and Tokyo, I think, or Shanghai, and how there were like Las Vegas in America, and it was a timely trend of the 30s because that's when they started the sexual revolution for the first time in the last century. The Roaring 20s and followed by the 30s, just like the 60s and 70s. But then the collaborator was the 1944 word for a bad person, and the word peace in 1948. Oh, never mind, not a bad person, just a powerful word. Collaborator in 1944, peace in 1948, and integration in 1958 were all strong operational terms. They lost their shock value when their immediacy passed. To the extent that propaganda is based on current news, it cannot permit time for thought or reflection. Hence, I've stopped listening to a lot of these MGTOW channels that are so flashy and so fast paced that they don't permit time for thought or reflection because they're targeting the most basic audience, the biggest channels, obviously. They'll target the most basic audience, so they'll have that flashiness in them. And therefore, they won't permit time for thought and reflection. But then there's a guy like Knowledge is Power or Alan Watt. Alex Jones is not like that at all. But he does permit some thought because he's very reflective in his approach. So anyway, a man caught up in the news must remain on the surface of the event. He is carried along in the current and can at no time take a respite to judge and appreciate. He can never stop to reflect. So yeah, they talk about female nature like it's different from male nature, but it's not really because it's just lacking a certain maturity of the male uh, in the basic female nature. So you can just analyze their actions and not just make fun of them as a group. You can tie it to your own similar actions, and if those MGTOW guys did that, they would promote a lot of self-awareness and positive maturity and attitude adjustment for society and positive psychological development. But that's not what I'm seeing. That's why I made certain videos criticizing them in the past. But there have been good changes in some channels too since then. There is never any awareness of himself, of his condition, of his society, for the man who lives by current events. Such a man never stops to investigate any one point, any more than he will tie together a series of news events. So I think 1984 we saw a lot of examples of this type of men out there in the society. Or this is more true for women. But we have already mentioned women's inability to consider several facts or events simultaneously. Actually, that's something they do very well. Man's inability to consider several facts or events simultaneously and to make a synthesis of them in order to face or to oppose them. Yeah, we are very one-track mind, men tend to be. Very focused on one thing and not liking to multitask. And also that's on a temporal level, but even since we're going so fast through life, we cannot consider all those different events because it's kind of like we're in split consciousness. That's why, like I said, we have a dual consciousness, left hand and right hand, and we go through life totally fragmented in those two different consciousness, and we can't tie those things together and get a more accurate observation of ourself, our condition, and our society. One thought drives away another. Old facts are chased by new ones. Under these conditions, there can be no thought. And in fact, modern man does not think about current problems. He feels them. That was just what they were saying about the feminists, man. They just go by their feels and decisions by their feels. And that's true. I mean, as a kid in college, that's how I went through life too. Just like decisions, I would just kind of toss a coin and shit. He reacts, but he does not understand them anymore. Then he takes responsibility for them. So he reacts, but does not understand what he's doing, and therefore he cannot take responsibility for them. Oh, shiznit. Yeah, because you don't have responsibility without awareness. That's common sense. He's even less capable of spotting any. Man, I wonder if this is just freaking fancy rehashing of certain quotes, mythological quotes, like Bible verses. It really takes a lot of thought to get through it, but and they're just so simple ideas. He is even less capable of spotting any inconsistency between successive facts. Man's capacity to forget is unlimited. And I noticed that in like the world of actions because I'm a very intellectual person. So for me, analyzing actions is a little difficult. So now that I'm reflecting a lot, I see so many illogical ideas that came into my mind, which were inconsistent with previous experience and observation. But yeah, man's capacity to forget is unlimited. Or that speaks to the unconscious and the subconscious and the conscious mind and all those factors playing in on a deeper level that permit our capacity to forget to be unlimited. It's like what they say about the feminists or the chasers, people on the cock carousel just doing the same thing again and again, not learning anything. This is one of the most important and useful points for the propagandists.